I am old enough to vote, join the army, pay taxes, and am a couple months away from being able to cheaply rent a car. I'm still not old enough to have ever seen the Dallas Cowboys in an NFC Championship game. Okay, this is gonna be a tough sell for how the Cowboys brand could have fallen so far in my generation. Considering I'm gonna basically go on and on about how irrelevant the most valuable team in the NFL is. They've got a ridiculously good and iconic logo, essentially just one uniform that gets worn 90% of the time, are a staple of everyone's Thanksgiving, and won 3 championships in the 90s on top of 2 from the 70s. But if you strip all of that away, what else is there? For going on 30 years, the Cowboys have coasted on the facade of their past and their brand image. But at what point is enough enough? At what point do we start taking stock of how little the Cowboys have to show for themselves since the first Twister movie came out? No, not the one that was in theaters this year, the OG one. That looked like this. The Cowboys won their last Super Bowl to conclude the 1995 NFL season. For the rest of the time that 90s offensive core was in Dallas, they mostly hung around as a playoff team, but went 1-3 in their last 4 playoff games of the 90s. The wheels fell off in 2000 when, starting in Troy Aikman's last season as Cowboys QB, that's how he got this gig, by the way, they rattled off 3 straight 5-11 seasons. Replacing Aikman became a real challenge for this team. Ryan Leaf started 3 games for the Cowboys in year 1 without a Hall of Fame QB. Shockingly, they went 0-3 in those games. 8 different QBs started games for the Cowboys from 2001 to 2005, and the best they did in those early years of the new millennium was getting smoked by the Carolina Panthers in the first round of the 2003 playoffs. I was too young to know what was going on in media at this time, but I can imagine rumblings were forming of, gee, the Cowboys have totally lost it, huh? A lot of Dale Gribble and Hank Hill type conversations about how America's team was playing more like Bosnia's team, which, all due respect to the people of Bosnia, I have no beef with your country. But what reignited the Cowboys' hype and masked the instability was the arrival of one man, one undrafted, fellow TV analyst QB who is currently brothers-in-law with the guy that plays the Deep. Romo had been the backup in Dallas for 3 full seasons before even appearing in 1 game, and the second he arrived, a switch was flipped for the team. Not just because they were winning more and Romo went 5-1 in his first 6 games as a starter, but he was the ultimate feel-good guy at first. Underdog story, his girlfriend dumped him and he got a terrible haircut the week before his first start, and he'd parlay that and being a good NFL QB for the Dallas Cowboys into dating multiple celebrities early in his career who you'd see at their games. That had to be such a dopamine hit for Cowboys owner / roster architect Jerry Jones. Wow, we've really gone this long without mentioning his name, huh? The same guy had been overseeing the Cowboys both as a business and as a team on the field since 1989. And guess what same guy still controls both of those things for them today? Jones had claimed he sensed Romo was going to be a great quarterback from when he was on the bench. But for how long he was on the bench, both that season and beyond, I'm not entirely sure I believe that. Either way, Tony Romo spent nearly the next decade as the Pro Bowl caliber starting QB of the team. A true leader and face of a team that seemed to really like him. I mean, his top wide receiver was once Terrell Owens, and he seemed to really believe in the guy.
It's my quarterback.
But you know what else happened during Romo's time as quarterback? They didn't win anything. Romo's first playoff game, one of the most gut-punching losses in the history of sports, can't even get a snap down to kick the go-ahead field goal. That is some next-level embarrassment. A loss at home the next year in the playoffs to the weaker division rival Giants, who'd go on to shockingly win the whole thing that year, then no playoffs in 2008, finally a playoff win in 2009 at home against their fellow rival Eagles before getting their brains bashed in by old man Brett Favre and the Minnesota Vikings. And then, They had to wait 5 seasons before even going back to the playoffs. Jerry Jones would later talk about how hurt he was that Romo never got a Super Bowl. And that's fine and all, except he's the one who built these teams. It's an extremely rare practice in this day and age for team owners to also have total control over the roster. Jerry Jones may be the single most hands-on owner in American sports. He's sad that Romo couldn't win a Super Bowl on these mostly 8-8 teams he himself picked the talent for. It's totally on you if the teams you built for nearly 30 years have not won a Super Bowl. Because the players come and go, the coaches come and go, the one constant is the guy putting everything together. Issues will arise when the same guy runs the same team since before Seinfeld aired. It should not be a story that you're considering bringing back 49-year-old Terrell Owens when he last played a game for you as a 35-year-old at a time when YouTube looked like this. So I don't mean to be too harsh here, but if you're heartbroken that your quarterback wasn't able to win a ring for you in that much time,
I don't know what to tell you, bud!
Here's a fun little Cowboys trivia fact. Since 1995, only one Cowboys player has won an on-field award higher than Rookie of the Year in a season. That would be 2014 Offensive Player of the Year DeMarco Murray, a third-round pick out of Oklahoma in 2011. Murray was outstanding in 2014 and a great sleeper find by Jones and his staff. And around Pro Bowlers like Dez Bryant, Jason Witten, and an elite offensive line, they did have their best chance at a Super Bowl the year they finally had all the pieces. They just had brutal luck on a deep ball to Dez Bryant that could have sent them to that elusive NFC Championship game. Their most complete team of this run got a bad bounce that kept them out. That sucks, but bad bounces happen to every team, whether or not you consistently build a contender or not. The teachable moment out of things like this is how you come out and respond. Unfortunately, this core group never really got the chance to do that. 2 weeks into the 2015 season, Tony Romo broke his collarbone and missed 8 weeks. 2 weeks into his return, he was hurt again and missed the whole season. The team went 4-12. Since the Richard Nixon presidency, the Cowboys are the closest thing the NFL has to the New York Yankees. The expectation, for better or for worse, is to win a Super Bowl every single year. 4-12 is not going to cut it. That part is obvious. But a rebuild is also not in the cards either. They added a huge offensive piece in 2016 drafting running back Ezekiel Elliott 4th overall. But we're also planning to roll out 36-year-old Tony Romo to start the season. Romo would never start another game in the NFL, suffering a compression fracture in his back in the preseason and walking away from playing once the season ended. A death blow to the morale for most teams. Not this one, though. They went 13-3 and earned the #1 seed in the NFC, thanks to great play from their second likable underdog quarterback of this story.
Here we go!
I'm going to say another somewhat controversial thing among NFL fans. Dak Prescott is a really good quarterback, and an even more likable dude. Sure, he may have a pretty defined playoff ceiling thus far into his career, and it seems that trickles down to the whole team no matter how deep it is. But anyways, let's get back on course. Skip Bayless was ridiculously out of line to shame him for opening up about his mental health struggles.
I suffered depression early in COVID to the point that I couldn't even go work out. Look, he's the quarterback of America's team.
I love this clip of him interacting with Hayden Hurst after a game.
For what you did, came out and talked about. Me and my mom have a foundation about suicide prevention.
Yeah.
Respect the hell out of you for talking about it, man.
Collab one day.
Absolutely. Come in.
Overall, I do believe Dak Prescott is a good dude, genuinely. Even though I think it's a little weird to get sedated to get tattoos. Speaking as someone who sat through 4.5 hours of work to get a shoulder piece, still understanding that it's light work compared to what some people go through, but I'm drifting way too far off course here. Prescott was drafted in the 4th round of 2016, and they had no reason to even dream he'd step on the field anytime soon. The plan was for him to develop in the background quietly, with a full depth chart of veterans ahead of him. Problem was, everyone on the depth chart got hurt, and Dak was the only guy left on day one. So he started 2016 as the Cowboys QB and never looked back. But as you already know from me talking about their lack of going to an NFC title game since before I was born, Dak has never come close to winning a ring, but he has been part of some generational playoff collapses. And that's how we'll summarize this era of this team with him leading the charge. In Dak's first playoff game against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, he played well individually, and the game seemingly came down to Prescott needing to lead a clutch drive down by 3 with a minute and a half left, going 3 for 4 passing on the drive, not counting a spike. Dak moved the Cowboys from their own 25 to the Packer 33 with 40 seconds left. Dan Bailey kicked a game-tying field goal. Packer ball, 3rd and 20, 12 seconds left. Aaron Rodgers to Jared Cook. Somehow. You gotta be kidding me.
To send the Packers into the NFC Championship game.
Pour one out for this delusional Cowboys fan. Actually, better yet, pour one out for the guy who got tattoos to honor a non-existent Super Bowl from the year before when they went 4-12. Next playoff game was a win 2 years later at home against the Seahawks. Dak played okay and did just enough to make the barrier to victory for Seattle a bit too out of reach at the very end of the game. Basically, flip that scenario the next week, and you have a 30-22 loss on the road against the Rams. They don't make the playoffs in 2019 despite Dak getting close to 5,000 passing yards, and he's hurt for 2/3 of the season in 2020, so their next playoff appearance is in 2021. A Nickelodeon game at home against the 49ers. The offense gets basically nothing going for the first 60% of the game before, hysterically, on 2nd and 28, Dak throws a pick. It looks like San Francisco can easily punch this game out of reach by going a couple feet, but they screw that up, get a false start, and give Dallas a chance to win it late. They open the bag of tricks, whether it was initially planned or not, and start moving down the field. As they keep moving, Dak scrambles down the field late to pick up a first down. This kind of thing is always risky because with no timeouts, you gotta make sure you have enough time to stop the clock and take your one shot down by the end zone. What you never ever account for is the ref tripping over your QB and offensive line, and that being just disruptive enough for you to not be able to snap the ball on time one more time and you lose. And it's still totally your fault because the ref has to be the one to set the ball on the ground. You can't do it yourself if you're Dak. That's against the rules. I have no idea how this didn't become one of the classic losses everyone makes fun of. This one just kinda got buried by the sands of time. But what a ridiculous, vintage Cleveland Browns type loss to end your season. I will give the boys credit. They made Tom Brady's last career game in the 2022 wildcard round a bloodbath for him. Dak played phenomenally, and Dallas crushed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The disaster this time was the next week. Back playing the 49ers again, the defense played phenomenally. Dak and the offense did not. Amazingly, despite only putting up 12 points in 59 minutes and 54 seconds of football, the Cowboys had the ball with a theoretical chance to go down the field and win this thing. You need some beautiful, sexy, unthinkably creative play design to get down the field and score right this second, or your season ends. No room for funny business. You gotta get this thing in the end zone or it's over. Ezekiel Elliott, a running back, is the only offensive lineman. He snaps the ball to Dak. Zeke, predictably, gets obliterated by the 49ers pass rush. Dak has no time to air it out, so he just has to throw the ball to someone close and hope they can do it all themselves. They can't. Season over. What in the world just happened here? A 7-year-old understands why this wouldn't work. The Dallas Cowboys banked the fate of their season on it nonetheless. Alright. So let's check in on the most recent Cowboys playoff game. At home, 2023 first round against the 7th-seeded Green Bay Packers. Let's totally randomly drop ourselves into about 2 minutes left in the first half to see where we're at.
by making the playoffs, and now they're on the divisional to take on the number 1 seed, 49ers.
You want to talk about building a hole that you can't get out of. 48-32 loss at home, season over. If you're wondering why I only covered the playoff games here, that's really all that matters here for the purposes of a downfall for 2 reasons. 1, that's all this organization cares about anyway, and they're 5-13 in playoff games since 1996. If that's the bar in your building, that can be the bar for this video. 2, that's why the Cowboys aren't taken seriously by non-Cowboy football fans anymore. Winning is what creates respect. In all sports. No one cared about the Florida Panthers hockey team 10 years ago, and once they started winning, everyone in South Florida became a Panther fan. The Kansas City Chiefs are the most culturally significant team in the league these days. 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years totally helps with that. The New York Jets have been to 3 AFC title games since Dallas last went to an NFC one. And the Jets haven't been to the playoffs since 2010. It's that bad for Dallas these days, and people, finally, are starting to realize that. Sure, some of it is funky luck, sure, some of it is self-inflicted, but the how doesn't matter. History books only remember wins and losses. For a team that puts so much stock into their wins, you'd think they'd realize that more, and claw tooth and nail to figure out any kind of new angle or roster decision to get better. But no. They're still coming up short, all the same, each time. You don't have your classic bandwagon Cowboy fans who also root for the Yankees, Lakers, and Duke men's basketball anymore. And that's because the Cowboys don't win enough anymore to get those normie fans. They coasted off those 90s teams for nearly 30 years, but they've now been mid-tier playoff underachievers for way longer than they were winning Super Bowls. All that losing, all that early playoff losing, I should say, adds up. They're not the Yankees or Lakers of football anymore. They're the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it may not be getting better anytime soon. Dallas is really constraining their ability to keep the team together based on how they're allocating their money to their stars as opposed to shoring up their holes. Sure, Dak has been reworking his deal, but that's not going to go on much longer. And there's frequent speculation he could quarterback someone else in 2025. If, it's even possible to move him with how much money he's making now, and very, very likely will surpass. Hey, so, during the making of this video, Dak was given the biggest contract ever. Yeah. CeeDee Lamb was a huge spark for their offense and one of the very best pass catchers in football, and they had this weird feud with him over his value in the holdout before finally paying him. That's not even touching their all-pro defender Micah Parsons' inevitable big contract, and how their all-pro offensive lineman Zach Martin held out last year to rework his deal. They're so driven by their stars now, and loyalty to guys who were good for them in the past, that Zeke Elliott is now their starting running back again, after a brutal year away in New England. Not quite bringing back T.O. bad, but they have easily the lowest ceiling of any running back room in the NFL entering 2024. They're not adding as much as they're maintaining. And they're maintaining a team that's never come close to winning anything. The coaches have changed, the players have kind of changed, but for 35 years there is one constant. The same person has put together these teams since Keith Hernandez was playing for the Mets. And look at Keith today. Something's gotta give. It's the definition of insanity to keep trying the same strategies of how you run your team and assume total control and expect different results. Not even being close to willing to admit you're not building the teams you used to. It's like if I made some banger videos in 2016, got no traction on my content since then, and refused to try anything different or take accountability, but I was confused as to why I'm getting 9 views all the time. I am once again asking the Dallas Cowboy decision makers and their fans to realize it's not 1995 anymore. The rest of the NFL doesn't take you seriously because you haven't won anything. Building okay teams who lose in the playoffs doesn't matter. The narrative is shifted by who holds the trophy. And quite simply, you haven't been good enough to do that. But it's all okay because you did it 30 years ago, right? How about them Cowboys?